I've got a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned there was two major unethical experiments, one being in Nazi Germany and one being in America. Has there been any more recent experiments which were found to be unethical?
Not really.
Yeah, not recent, because there's so much stringent and ethics and...
There's just so much governance and ethics involved in approving a clinical trial that, you know, you're stuck in ethics. To do an application for an ethics for a clinical trial, you're looking at probably 3 to 4 weeks, and you've got to actually prove that this research actually, the benefits of it outweigh the risks. And once you prove that as well, you get, you know, the scientific ethics committee that goes sit down, and you've got scientists on there, you've got physicians on there, a range of people with different expertise sitting on there that review this to the point of scrutiny. The amount of comments you get back, why are you taking 10 mils of blood extra? Can you scientifically prove why that's necessary? The drug formulation, have you thought about it? How are you going to deal with a parent that, you know, for example, so there's so many ethical things that you have to go through, and then on top of that you've also got to do governance as well. So there's so much regulations within clinical trials that there hasn't been any numerous cases where there was unethical of all of that, because prior to that there was no regulations. You just did it all in the name of research. You did whatever you wanted to whoever you wanted, and that was just it. And, you know, as if you're a physician, people trust you to do the right thing, and, you know, that is the profession. So that's why all these regulations and things like that. Some people hate it. People that want to run studies, be it sponsors and things like that, they do find ethics, or like, why do we have to go through ethics? Why are they rejecting our application? And that's because you're looking at it with scrutiny to iron out every single risk there are possible. Otherwise, you do get a claim if anything happens against that.
Okay, one more question. It takes 12 to 15 years from the clinical trial to when the medicine is on the market. How much of that is taken by the FDA approval and the process and the compliance rather than actual clinical trial and process?
FDA approval usually takes about 2 years. So the whole from 2 to 12 to 15 years is mainly partly ethics. So ethics could take about a good 6 weeks. And then governance another 4 weeks. So that's already, what, months? Yeah. And then preclinical, that's just seeing if the drug or that molecule is okay with the human cell testing and then the rat testing and then early phase testing. So there's a stringent process. That's why it takes a good 15 years for a small molecule or drug to come out tomorrow.
Thank you.
And then can I add to that as well? So once it gets approved by the FDA as well, there is extra level of regulations and safety reporting you've got to do. So just because you get a drug out in the market, the process does not stop there. You've got to do safety and annual reports per year to actually demonstrate that there is no extra safety adverse events associated with that drug within the time period that's out there. And that's why I explained the therapeutic goods administration, that is their main job.
And the phase 4 side of the post-marketing side of it as well.
I have a question. Is it hard to recruit for that first initial phase of healthy participants?
No. With healthy studies, you've got students or backpackers, and with mainly healthy volunteers, they're getting paid to participate in the study. So they're looking at getting paid 1,000, 3,000, depending on how long the study is going for. They'll just sign up. But it's not a matter of they've signed up and they're enrolled in the study. How I said to you, firstly, reviewing the informed consent and then going through the inclusion-exclusion criteria. They can sign up for it, but they need to pass the inclusion and exclusion criteria for them to be enrolled into the study.
So this might differ between organisations, but are you assigned one drug that you follow through the process, or is it like an ad hoc, you're going to this site today to look at this clinical trial?
Right now I'm assigned to 5 projects, so those 5 projects you're looking at 5 different drugs. So, I don't know.
Assigned to 11.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've got a range of different studies that you're enrolled in.
Yeah.
And the higher up you go, the less trials you're assigned to, because obviously it comes with more work.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could be assigned to many protocols, but it's not just the one drug that you're looking at. Therefore, again, there's a lot of time taken into learning that protocol, making sure everything is done correctly, because you don't want things coming back on you as well. As a CRA, you're the primary contact for the site and the primary contact for pharma. Yeah.
Hi. So, for example, there's like a study that's been shut down for any reason, like are the volunteers like monitored, or is there like a procedure that's followed?
Yeah. So once you've got negative results, there was last year they closed down the sites in Adelaide, Perth, Hobart. We closed down the site, but it's up to the investigators to follow through their patients to review them. Pharma also would want to do a post follow-up as well. So just whether it's a phone call to see how they're going, or if they're coming in for lab results, they just post. But mainly it's their primary investigator, the primary doctor that we're following up.
And there's a section of that as well in the protocol that identifies what you do in the case of a study closeout or in case a drug does not go to the market. So you've got to actually eloquently explain that in ethics in case that happens, and that does happen, and obviously it's expected. So you follow the protocol. If you say you're going to call the participant 24 hours after discontinuation of that drug, then you've got to, that's your requirement to call them within 24 hours. If you write in the protocol, I'm going to see them in and they're going to come back into the clinic 3 weeks post, because that's when the drug goes out of their mark, gets out of their system, then that's what, so the protocol actually does detail exactly what protocol you're following, and that's what you're compliant against.
And site needs to comply to that because they don't want to deviate from the protocol. If they deviate, then again, it's a matter of submission to ethics, and it's just another long process where they try to avoid.
So one question for Tamir. You have very easy job, mate. Starting 10:30, going for a meal break at 1, going to pray Asr. Are you lucky with your employer, or everyone in your line of work has got easy job?
I mean, me myself, I'm easygoing. So my boss is actually very good friends with one of the guys that hired me. So the guy that put in the referral was best friends with my boss. So that's not the reason why.
He just gets away with a lot of things.
Yeah,
clearly.
That's not the reason why. I mean, in terms of salah, you got to pray when you got to pray. You know? But yeah, it's important to have like a work-life balance, not just work. And at times you might be really busy, like I mentioned before. I might come in at 10, but then stay until 8. You know. But yeah, it's dependent on the day But I'm just saying the majority of the time, I'm
you're slacking.
I'm out by 5.
Yeah. And obviously your salah's a priority as well. So I think most workplaces do allow for that. They do understand that you have to daily prayers. Usually lunch, it's quite easy to pray dhuhr because it's during your lunch break. But then usually with most contracts, you get an afternoon tea and a morning tea. So usually you'd pray your asr then as well. So.
But most of the task is study specific, so if you get it done within the time frame and you've got so many time to chill, why not?
As long as you get your client
work done.
As long as you get the work done, yeah. Because again, everything is needs to be done in a timely manner.
When did you guys find time to
Start.
You will start.
Okay. For me, I think the challenge was just gaining respect and also getting people to, I guess, not believe in you but kind of trust you, because it's a role that requires a lot of advisory role as well as ethics and compliance and legislation. And before I started in this role that I have now, I only had 2 years experience, and they wanted someone with a 10-year experience. So it's about demonstrating that you can do something that someone can do with a 10-year experience, obviously with your adaptability and proving that. So obviously that was difficult, and then going in as well, and then I guess being judged that you're a young person but they're coming to you for advice, and also playing that role like it's a senior role, and yeah, I guess gaining respect from your colleagues, your clinicians that have over 25 years experience. They come to me for ethics advice, governance. I do a lot of their startup. They'll come to me for negotiation with external contracts in terms of their clinical trials, and I will usually say, negotiate harder, you can get more. So yeah, like it's just people, I guess, kind of your age is, for me, that's what I usually just struggle with is, people think I'm a lot older than what I am based on the experience and the role that I play, but I actually don't have a lot of experience. But I've learnt a lot and was adaptable, and that's what I bring to the role. And I had to learn a lot with ethics and governance and all these rules and regulations, and then being a trainer, being an auditor, and being the expert within that field as well. So yeah, just bringing yourself up to date and making sure that you're giving people those advice and whatnot, and also believing in yourself that just because someone has 25 years experience over you does not mean they know more.
Myself, I'd say it would be the same. I'm more so site-based, dealing with sites, dealing with study coordinators, and dealing with these investigators, high-up doctors. So intimidation at its best. They try to intimidate you. It's a matter of, why are you telling me how to do my job? I'm not telling you how to do your job. I'm just working with you on how to do this work, because I don't want you or your site to be in trouble, and I don't want to be in trouble. Saying that, one of the sites that I was working with, one of my oncology studies, director, high up, what's his name? Boyer, Michael Boyer, just Google him, you'll see. I was the third monitor, the third CRI that came on, and because there was a change in the study team, it was a matter of, I do not respect you. What are you going to tell me that I do not know? Study had enrolled 12 oncology cancer patients. To have 12 patients on a study, and especially a cancer study, that's big. They were the highest recruiting for Australia, not just Australia, for Asia Pac. So I would say to him, there's a lot of quality and data issues at the start. You and I, we need to work together, you and your site. No, you can't tell me how to do my work. Okay, I'm telling you this. If it's not the company, our internal audits, you're going to get audited by either FDA or by the sponsor. 3 weeks later, without even me wanting to know the information, we're going to be getting audited by another pharma company. Is that right? What was I trying to tell you? We need to work together. So it's just a matter of, especially with this industry, soft skills are important. Knowing your soft skills, how to approach these doctors who think they're all fancy. So how you talk to them and how you deal with them, that's an important thing.
I actually think ICF issues is probably the most confusing aspect of my job, dealing with different informed consent sheets and looking over it and trying to actually understand what's going on, because you actually have to read and know, because a lot of the documents that I'm exposed to, I just look at it and know exactly what it's talking about. But regarding ICFs, I think it's a little bit more, it takes a little bit more to understand. It might just come with a bit more experience.
Informed consent.
Yeah,
so
it's the ethics.
Yeah, it's just a matter of knowing what details that you're looking. So there could be many informed consents. For instance, just the initial main informed consents, or if there's taking extra bloods, they need to sign for the extra bloods that need to be taken, or if there's tumor samples that they need to take, they need to sign for those informed consents. So just knowing the main details of what is they're signing for. And it's not even just the signing. If there's a witness that's required for them to witness the signature, how they've dated their signature, if it's been backdated by the doctor. So it's the little finer details that you need to look at.
And also I think clinical trials are becoming more complex, and the protocols also become more complex. So instead of having a 2-page document, which you used to, now you're dealing with a 15-page document just for informed consent to explain all the risks and things like that. So when you get a project and there is an informed consent, it's not the same as the last study, because the drug is different, the patient population is different, and it's, you know, in oncology, it's another thing you're dealing with. If it's pediatrics, it's even more complex. So yeah, they're not going to be the same all the time.
I'm Abdul Aziz. I'm very happy to see a new generation of scientists, Somali scientists. What you study here and your experience, do you think anything has become transferred back home to Somalia or East Africa anywhere?
Not this current moments, no. And not this time point, no. Especially clinical trials, human trials, no. I think I brought this discussion up when I was working as a study coordinator, especially in the phase 1, you would see, like I said, students, backpackers coming through, and these would be students, backpackers from every other origins, but I did not see a single African. I saw one African, which was a Sudanese, and then they dropped from the study thereafter. It just takes not even just maybe trust, but clinical trials at the moment, I'd say maybe another 50 years.
Probably.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, people don't believe in, you know, the benefits of research.
Research.
And what, contributing to, like, for example, my mum would be, you know, for example, when you're giving birth and you have a midwife and they're like, oh, do you want a student? She'd be like, no, I don't want anyone experimenting on me. So it's the same thing as Somalis. I think we think that, you know, especially with a drug, they'll be like, oh, they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
You know, so taking back home and trying to explain that to them, it's, you know, it's just...
And especially oncology clinical trials, when I go to site and reviewing the patient notes, when the patient started, I can see the tumour, the samples, they were close to progressive disease. Once they've started on these treatments, they're slowly coming down to stable disease, all the way up to complete response, which means it's bettering the quality of life for them. But us Africans, it's a matter of, no, they're training on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That means that a lot of these trials are tested on like Caucasian
Yeah.
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 people. So
Yeah.
do you think about how that's transferable to, do you think it would help like an African patient?
It would be up to the doctor, the GP, how they would take it on. We're only doing the research, giving data and results.
Even with Africans,
there's variability.
Yeah.
even with Africans, not even that, like talking about oncology research and cancer trials and whatnot, a lot of the times you'd find out an African person was diagnosed with cancer after they died.
Later.
It's so low key, but then, like, I don't know, like with my experience in the Eritrean community, a lot of the time it's too late, they'll never even consider going into a clinical trial, whereas Adan people, they're willing to try whatever it takes, to...
it's a lack of trust.
It's
exactly, lack of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a chance, I think there's a chance where you can take this to East Africa and, all of those, but obviously the most important thing is putting those regulations and laws in place, because you can't just do clinical trials on people. There actually has to be laws that govern this and make sure that you have similar standards to the FDA in America as well as the European Union, something of equivalent standard, and then you can go and start rolling out clinical trials. And obviously it would be interesting to see it in that population, East Africans or any other nationality is quite different to a Caucasian, and I think a lot of drug companies now also looking at variability within different populations. So there are some clinical trials I used to work in as a coordinator that actually just used to, one of the eligibility requirement was you had to be Asian, and that's to test on an Asian how that data is going to be different to what a Caucasian would produce. And I think there is a lot of that. But obviously, like I said, there just has to be the rules and regulations and the proper systems in place and the people that have the expertise in those fields before you start rolling out clinical trials in East Africa.
Because at the end of the day, for a clinical trial is where first and foremost looking at patients' rights, safety and well-being, and if we can look into that, work on that, then why not? Why can't we do it in Africa? Yeah.
So are there any exceptions to that time frame, or is that set in stone?
Just let me go back. So here, each phase, there's a purpose for each phase. Like I said, phase 1, we're just here to determine the safety and just that dosage, whether if it's 500 milligram, 100 milligram, once it's been determined, moving on to phase 2. Phase 2, evaluate the effectiveness and looking at side effects. I think somebody asked whether, at what point is there going to be negative results. We may see negative results here at phase 2, so the trial might not go on. If there is, we won't go on. If there isn't, we move on. To review more adverse reaction and the long-term use.
Yeah, but I just want to know if, like, the molecule, the drug...
There's no change.
There's no change?
There's no change.
No
it's just... No, there's no change.
Okay.
No change.
So this might be like a high-level thing, but you mentioned that there's sponsors that sponsor these trials. Do you ever feel like there's a tension between your role as like a CRA and their interests sponsoring the drug, or is that not something that you really experience and it's just kind of like a Hollywood kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's just a Hollywood thing. There's many sponsors that you work on. The 5 studies that I'm working on, I'm working with 5 different sponsors. So it's 5 different sponsors, 5 different molecules, drugs that I'm working on. So no, it's just a matter of putting on a front for each sponsor. Yeah.
I think there's enough research
Yeah.
sites for you to be able to conduct that. I think that competition doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And usually sponsors would have a preference over a site. They like a site and they are actually approved by audits, and the audits comes out really good. They do initiation and actually see how compatible that site is for the drug that they're doing and the expertise level within that site. So yeah, I think usually people just go to the same site, or if they have a different site, they will go there. But I think there's so many sites across Australia and
yeah.
outside of Australia as well. Australia is doing studies for the US, Singapore and China, and vice versa as well. We've got a couple of studies in Italy. So there is, everywhere you go in the world, there's clinical trials that are happening. So I don't think sponsors deal with that so much anymore.
But again, depending on the therapeutic industry that you're working on as well, we may have a lot of sites, but we may only get 1 or 2. So again, there is competition. Yeah. Some of the trials, the Australian government is not paying for it.
Yeah.
It's the sponsors. It's the sponsors that are actually providing that drug to the sites. So
for it to be marketed in Australia, it has to be registered on PBS. So
yeah,
the government's going to pay for the treatment.
once the trial has been effective,
approved,
yeah,
yes.
once approved.
The idea behind it.
How much is the government paying and how much is the sponsors paying?
Well, we don't know what the sponsor's paying. We're just getting the drug from them to have it being tested at site.
Yeah.
But once it's been approved, it goes on PBS.
Yeah. So they conduct, sponsors pay for that drug to be tested, and for every site they have a different amount that they negotiate for, and it can go something from $50,000 to enrol, say, 10 patients to something like $500,000, and that's just to do the first stage. So imagine how much it costs us for you to get it approved. It's millions and millions of dollars, and that's why all these regulations exist, because they know if people had money, they would just go and approve all these and say, yep, it's going to cure you and all of that stuff. So it is an industry that's filled with a lot of money, especially the US. They've got a lot of money, and so it depends on the trial, how much they're going to pay, and the site, and what drug they're testing at that point.
Another thing was one of the drug companies was actually sued because they didn't have a consent on a site in Nigeria, 5 kids died. So there is more reason
Yeah.
that they're not following the rules because it's best to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
It's a whole regulation ethics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a whole lot of regulations, and I think I covered it initially as well. You actually have to have a liability insurance in place, and that is usually paid by the sponsor, which says we'll cover you for $500,000 in case you get any claim for any side effect. So you do have to have those medical insurances in place, and obviously to take it to East Africa, you've got to be able to afford
money
if you had to do a payout.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Abdi. I just wanted to ask a question because there are a lot of younger people in the audience. What would your advice be in terms of their career, let's say in high school, where, how would you advise them
To get into the industry, or initially, the first advice I give is make sure that you want to get into the industry, that you want to get out of bed in the morning to go to work. While you're studying this is you want to have a purpose. One of the things that Tamir mentioned is, again, you're helping to improve quality of life for a patient, or even to help this patient's illness. So there has to be a purpose, a want that you want to do this, an interest. At the same time, if you're interested in science, if you're interested in research, this could potentially be a field for you. Yeah.
I think the biggest advice I'd give to people is experience. Experience is paramount, as well as those transferable skills. that was mentioned earlier. Try to have as much experience. It doesn't mean that you have to have experience within a pharma company, but by the time you graduate, your resume should be able to sell, and you're selling on those transferable skills like your time management, working at McDonald's for 4 hours, your pharmacy assistant job that's already you're exposed to the drugs and the schedules and all of that stuff. So having experience from abroad, a lot of scope, not specific to your field, helps. And that's the biggest advice, is having that experience before you actually graduate gets you in the door, and it gives you a job, and also networking. But how you network is doing those work experience. If you're doing a university degree that doesn't have work experience in company within inside it, then I would highly suggest from second year you're doing work experience. So by the time you graduate, you've got 2 or 3 years experience, and no one's gonna, I guess, some people, I think, university students, they think, oh yeah, I'm gonna, I'm gonna finish, and then my first job is gonna be, my professional job. It does not work like that right now. People that have PhDs don't have jobs. So you've got to be, working on building yourself, selling yourself, and you do that really well through experience and adaptability and holding those roles from different places. Even if it's volunteering at your soccer club, that's, that's leadership skills. That's leadership skills that are required and transferable, whether it's from engineering to IT to, the medical research field. So that is what my advice is, getting experience.
And if you already know that this is something that you want to do, it's a matter of playing smart. Tamir also mentioned RMIT and Monash. They give you RMIT gives you the 40 weeks of placement that you do, and Monash, I think it's about 6 weeks, 6 to 3 months.
So it's two different sets. So,
So if you know that this is something that you want to do, it's a matter of trying to get yourself into those programs where you'll get the experience, where you'll get the internship. And if you don't get into it, just say you get into a science degree, as Katan said as well, second year, look for an organisation where you can even do a volunteer experience. They will invest their time on you. If it's just a volunteer, if it's a short internship that you do, there is a chance that you'll get hired with them.
You guys willing to mentor if a young person wants to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, why not? Like I said, the disclaimer, so long as parents don't come after me. If they want to go into a CRA role and I mentor them, great. I just don't want parents coming after me saying, you got my child being a jet setter.
So I think that's what we're all here for, is, to help our community and, help where it's needed. And if that, there is mentoring that's required, we're more than happy. And I think,
Thank you.
Are we done?
No. Anyone can decide?
My name is Tahira, and I was just wondering, this is a question for all of you, but what's your favourite part of all your jobs?
This is a hard one. I'll say flexible hours. Like if I do a late night, one day I can come in, the next day, and I guess based on my schedule during that day, that determines my work schedule, so I don't have to be there at 7 a.m. in the morning, which I used to do before, I guess. So yeah, it's just a working flexibility, and also working from home. If I've got to do an audit report, that kind of gives me time to, just work from home and prepare, and
For me, it would be the whole aspect of the industry is helping the quality of life of patients. So when I get to site and I'm reading the patient's source and their notes, I see an improvement in their lab results, and it's like, yes, this drug is working for them. It's making a difference. You read the notes and you see the benefits that it gives them. It's like, I think that's my favorite aspect of the working in this industry.
I think she read my mind. I was going to say that.
I look like a bad guy now.
Yeah, definitely. Just knowing that you're helping people, trying to get a drug out there that's going to help someone in the future. You never know, that might be your grandma or someone, So it's definitely something that's rewarding.
Hello? My question
question was, if you did a undergrad in just basic science, would you be able to kind of get a career path towards any of your professions, or would you need to specialise?
No.
Well, I did a science degree at Monash, and at the time, even when I finished my degree, I had no idea what a CRO was, CRA, no clue. But yeah, definitely, so long as you're doing a life science degree, the skills are relatable, so you'll definitely be able to transfer your skills and get into the industry.
And once you're in the industry, they'll train you as quick as possible. Yeah,
we've got a lot of nurses as well that, say for example, they get tired of the clinical environment and they were a nurse for like 5 years or 10 years, and then they come and become a research nurse, and then after a while they want to have a family life, and so they end up being a CRO, I guess more of a remote base where you don't have to travel. So we do have nurses, scientists, physiotherapists, whatever, that kind of. It's still, as long as you have that science knowledge, and then the rest is trainable, like your legislations and all of that, and you learn as you go. I mean, later on you might want to do masters in, say for example, I do a lot of legal documents and contracts and stuff, but I had to bring myself up to speed with that. But usually you would need like a master's on, contracts and legal and that kind of stuff. So I think nowadays people are more open-minded to training people and getting that skill once you're within an organisation. But yeah, it's a varied role, and you can get in with pretty much.
We've only spoken about two or three roles within just the industry. There's many other departments, like for instance data entry, statistics, the medical monitors, a wide range of departments within the clinical field. So if a CRA does not suit you, governance research does not suit you, there's many other pathways to take.
A side effect, and how do you guys get the side effect out of them?
A simple side effect could just be a matter of nausea, or they've gone to the toilet too many times. That could just be a reaction of the drug that they're taking. How we know that, or how the doctors know that, is that's if the patient lets them know that, oh, I had a headache after I've been given this drug, or I couldn't eat, I threw up. That's a side effect, and that's something that's documented. Yeah.
How do you know the dosage, how much dosage you need for the patients?
That's already pre-populated. That's already given to us by the pharma company. So it's already put in the protocol, say these patients will be either randomized to 100 or to 200, and that's what they're getting. It's not something that we decide or the doctors decide.
Yes.
It's the pharma companies that's deciding.
So it's like a science experiment. You come up with like a hypothesis. I think you do science, and they say, what do you want to do? And then you say, oh, I want to see, if this ball, I throw it up, how, fast it falls down. It's a similar experiment, but with a range of scientists and, pharmacists and all of that. And then they come into what dose is safe enough. And then they go do rat studies and animal studies and stuff like that. And by the time it comes to the monitor, you already know you've got to give them 30 mils and monitor them for their side effects and stuff. So there's all of that. It's a lot of experimentation and things like that.
About sponsorship, like sponsoring some of the drugs when they're doing that tests and high level sponsors. How, I know that you were talking about quality of life and improving people's life. In terms of big depending on who's giving the sponsorship, how do you go about that? Like I say, does the NRA, the National Rifle Association of America, decides to sponsor you for something? How ethically, how do they decide on agreeing with that sponsorship?
So every sponsor,
Firstly, let me sponsor is a pharma.
Yeah, so it's a pharma. So they're already a sponsor. They've got the money to run this trial. What they've got the resources, the money, and whatever else that's required. So pretty much their businesses. Let's look at it as a business, an organisation that has $10 million, and out of that 10 million, they want $500,000 to go into cardiology, another 10, blah, blah, blah. So they've got the money. The thing is ethics. Their big pushback is ethics. It's how are you you've got this money, you want to do this research, but you've got to get through a hurdle first, and that hurdle is ethics. So you've got to be able to demonstrate that your research, the benefits of that research or that protocol or that For example, a protocol is 30 pages, something, sometimes some are 100, and you're going through the background of the population, the drug, the formulation, what animal studies, what the stats are, every single aspect of it, and you're pretty much giving that Bible of yours from a company saying, this is what we're going to, as an ethics committee, we want you to look at this, and we want you to accept this as an ethically acceptable research for us to go out there. So that's where ethics comes in, and obviously ethics reject a lot of them. There's, they reject a lot of studies. There's some studies that go through and you look at a document and then, an informed consent recently that came through and, it was very poorly written and would say, look, it doesn't really make sense to me, you've got to rewrite it again, send it back. And there's stages of ethics as well from, so unless you have a really well done protocol and processes in place and you're able to demonstrate that to a scientific committee which is made up of 200 people from different expertise levels, then so that's what determines essentially. Once you've got ethics approval, then you're good to go. You provide the money and then you go to those sites and say, we've got this drug and we've got an ethics approval and this is the letter of ethics approval. And once ethics approves it, they actually give you a letter saying we ethically approve this research project, and every single document that was looked at gets produced. And as a site, you cannot start project unless you have ethics approval, and you cannot recruit as well. That is a legal requirement. So yeah, a lot of studies get pushed back in ethics and to a point where they're scientifically sound, and this drug can be tested for the benefiting of medical research. Does that answer your question? Okay, sorry.
In regards to question, in regards to sponsorship, are they the owners of the drug?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the sponsor is the pharmaceutical company. We just call them sponsor. Technically, it's just the pharmaceutical company. That's all you need to know. Sponsor is the pharma.
Partnership or the copyright or the ownership of the drug actually works. The process, how does the drug become owned by a company or who invents them? I'm just trying to think how the process works. So
they've started with that molecule. So they've started with that molecule in their labs, in their laboratory, working on it. Once it comes to clinical, it's humans. So we take over.
Yeah.
Because they can't run the studies. If they could run the studies, it would be great. But because they can't run the studies, they outsource that work to us. So we work on their behalf to get that drug out to market.
So it's an innovation. You come up with an idea.
Yeah.
If you're a sponsor, for example, and you've got a range of scientists, chemists, and farmers and whatever, and you say, okay, we're going to test this, and then later on you say, oh, okay, we can actually test it on this other experiment and see what the results are. So sometimes it's by chance that molecule. Then they go, oh, okay, it's worth making us money. It's a binding agreement between the sponsors saying we own ownership of this drug, and we're going to publish these results, and they take all their legal responsibilities, and then as a site, these are your roles and responsibilities which you must abide by, and those are what those contracts are about. So as a sponsor, at the end of the day, they have legal ownership of that product, that product, and there's a contract, and they've got a legal team that negotiates for that.
So, considering that you're talking about the legal, so in terms of, because right now you're talking about the process of legal ownership of that and the ethics process. Does the ethics process take into consideration, I guess at the end of the day we all recognise that they're businesses. We know that this is probably a multi-trillion-dollar business in the industry. Does that consider the markup when it comes to this drug actually gets on the market? What the profit margin is going to be for this sponsor? And the reason I ask is I cannot remember his name, but we all know about that guy, the CEO of that pharmaceutical company. And there was that drug, I don't know if it was a life-saving drug. And do you remember his name now? Yeah, something like that. So are there systems now in the process, especially the ethics process, to ensure that something like that doesn't happen? Because ultimately, I guess the purpose would be to benefit humanity. And I acknowledge that there needs to be product to be made. But at what cost? And do you guys in your field have enough autonomy in your role to say, hey, I'm not so comfortable with that in terms of my ethics, or you've just got to turn the line? And I say that because I know a lot of healthcare professionals, like, for example, say you work on a ward, a particular medical team will just decide out of nowhere that a patient's in a far. You've got to continue with those orders and walk off the job.
Okay.
Is that a similar thing for you guys, or?
I guess in terms of like ethics and governance, there's a whole heap of people, 25 people that make a decision. You actually have meeting minutes and you discuss every single thing that was discussed, and that gets minuted, and you've got a secretary on there as well. So you do have those decisions, but there is no aspect of ethics where you have to. They look at the budget and they look at the contract. So the contract does. There is a clause on there in terms of how much you're paying the participants, and ethics mainly are concerned about how much you're paying those participants, especially when you're a site and you're going to say, I'm offering these people $2,000 to be in a clinical trial facility for 30 days. So they look at those things. Is that sound? Is that scientifically needed? Do you why? It might be like a business. If you sell me, you can earn $2,000 sitting on a bed, then I take a couple of bloods. That sells to backpackers and things like that. So they look at it from the protection of participants, not so much about how much pharma's going to make and how much they sell that drug for. That's when they register it through the Therapeutic Administration, which I told you, every single pharmaceutical device and drug is also listed on there, and that's when they decide on how much that drug is once it gets approved. But in ethics, at that point, you don't know how much you're going to sell that drug for. You don't even know if it's going to be approved and at what stage, and whether this is just another idea of having a novel treatment and you being optimistic.
No, I don't think that far into it. No, yeah.
Mustafa's 100th question. I think that probably leads perfectly on to what I was going to say. Do you feel like pressure from sponsors to move through the procedure as fast as possible, or have you ever faced a situation where you've dealt with someone who's linked or to the sponsor?
When the study started, there's already timelines that they're working with. Just depending on where they're at that timelines, for instance, if there's data that's required to be reviewed very quickly by the medical monitors or the medical team and site is lagging, we would have to push them. You signed a contract, and this is one thing that I always say to them, you signed a contract, you knew the timelines of what you had to work with. I've been given by these dates by the sponsor, and we need to get data or results by these dates. Let's work together. So it just, again, depends on what words you use with them.
I think I used to work for a site, and I think sometimes you do kind of feel the pressure, but it depends on the sponsor, I think, that gets sent to you. So they're all about starting and getting this project up and running, and sometimes as a site you don't have that capacity, you don't have the bed space to bring in these people, and obviously that's then where the contracts comes. Sponsors are quite clear in their timelines and what they're paying you for and what you're producing and those results. So if they say we're paying you from the first, recruitment has to start in January, and you agree to it, then you got to be able to recruit within that time frame and whatnot. But I think if you do work for a site, you do get under the pump and you get all these different sponsors, and some are a lot more, let's go, and then some are a bit more crazy about it and they're not really as things. So you can, but I think if you have a good enough relationship with working with those sponsors, at the end of the day, it's a teamwork. They're trying to do their job as a site, you're trying to do your job, and it's just a matter of working together and figuring out what works. And if that sponsor wants that report within 2 business days, get it done within 2 business days if they want, so it's just about working with other people. You have to be able to work with people with different personalities and different work ethics and different...
End of the day, the sites want to get paid. They want to get paid for their work. So the quicker they get their work done, the quicker that they'll be paid. So for instance, if a patient does 2 visits, that site will be paid for 2 visits. So if those 2 visits have not been done, then site's not going to get paid.
Just to add on to that, I've actually been working with a site that has been closed for the past year, and because I was new to the study, the old person that I took the handover from didn't really have a good relationship with the site. So as soon as I got involved with the study, I had to email the study coordinators on a daily basis. I remember my manager from Thailand, I think she would message me every day telling me follow up. I'd follow up with the site, they wouldn't reply. I'll call the site, they'll pick up, they're like, hello, who's this? I'll be like, oh, it's Tam, it's calling me PPD. Straight away, they'll be like, oh, listen, I'm in the middle of something, I gotta get to... I think the relationship you build with the people you're working with, from the other side, the actual site, is really important.
Maybe my question was in regards to who can actually be a sponsorship. Does it always have to be a pharmaceutical company, or can it be someone that's just really wealthy and can afford to sponsor a drug and sees it as a business opportunity?
No, it can be an individual person, but usually, for example, we have with the Telethon Kids Institute, there's a portion of it where we actually sponsor, and there's a portion of it where we actually act as a site. So the studies where we are sponsors, we've got clinicians that come up with these ideas, and they're investigating these drugs. But at the end of the day, they're covered by our medical insurance, and they also work for the organisation. So they're still covered by a company, if you get what I mean. They have to be working for a company and an organisation for them to be able to be a sponsor.
You wouldn't be an individual person as a sponsor?
As you can't.
No.
Anyone else has a question? Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I think I'm probably allowed. That's okay. I'm still stuck with the timeline, 12 to 15 years.
It's a long process.
If there's an outbreak of disease somewhere in the world, a vaccine or drugs are needed quickly.
Yeah.
Does it take the same process 4 years? And does the clinical trial always involve humans rather than using mice?
So usually how it starts off is the actual trials are actually tested in animals, rodents, because it's just safer that way. Because if you get a drug and you give it to a human, and if anything happens, it's on you. So you'll get into trouble. So usually that's why it'll take so long. Starting off with animals, and from there going on, making sure that it's all safe and ethically up to standard, and then going on to humans. That's why the duration is long.
A longer process. There was one question you asked, Anilu. Oh yeah. So for instance, the vaccines. If that vaccine is needed, a drug for that disease, that whatever is required, would already be out in the market. So there's already treatments for whatever is already needed. The clinical trials is new treatments that are going to be brought out to markets. So that's what all these clinical trials are about. For instance, polio or whatever vaccine is required, or even a cold and flu, there's already a treatment out in the market. So if something is needed, there's already treatment there.
And a lot of the times as well, there's already a drug out there. They're just changing a slight bit of the formulation. So that's why he has to go through these, trials and phases and things like that. But if you already have, something that's approved for that particular formulation, and you're going to test on something else, I think that timeline is shorter. But obviously, if you had something, for example, and you wanted to give out a new therapeutic device, for example, diabetes, there's clamps and things like that. You do, and that timeline was shortened. You actually do risk you being in trouble, and also you won't have the clinical data that's required for you to make that sound judgment, and obviously that's an ethical risk. And you'd have cases like the historical evidence where I showed you, where you're just trialing on a drug where it has not gone through those extringent, very strict guidelines, and you know that this is safe and everything has been ironed out. So as much as it's good and you'd want to just go and start treating these people, then if you have a side effect that you didn't account for, then
it's on you.
You have a liability and someone suing you, and it's just a whole big mess, which no one wants to do.
I just wanted to ask how much interactions do you guys have with the patients? Do you have to deal with them all?
As a study coordinator, I had a lot of interaction with the patient, because you're dealing with the patient. When I moved over to the other side as a CRA, you've got no interaction with the patient. The only interaction of patients you have is their case report forms. That's about it. There was a point where I wanted to go back working as a study coordinator because of that interaction, face-to-face, the stories that I would get from the students, the backpackers. I actually miss that. But end of the day, it's a matter of what you enjoy most or what you like to do.
You're just a number. Patience.
Don't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it just depends.
It depends on the role, and I think as you go into CRO or project management, you start being more office and more going through that avenue, and that is, I guess, the way to get up in the industry as well. So you can't be, as much as you'd love to be, seeing patients all the time and hearing those lovely stories, and people collecting blood. I used to have to collect blood at 7 a.m. in the morning, from these participants, and they used to chat to me even though I didn't have coffee. So there are are those experiences and stuff like that, and it's a good thing. But if you want to go up in your career, you unfortunately have to kind of deviate, and those other roles are where, you know, your progression of the career goes.
Just out of curiosity, how much, when you're doing human trials, how much do they get paid to do trials?
The patients?
Patients, yeah.
Patients only get paid at phase 1, so, which is healthy volunteers. That's the only time that they're getting paid. Phase 2, 3, it's more so for the disease. So phase 2 and 3, disease patients are enrolled. The only thing that they'll be reimbursed for is either their meals, if they do have it at the hospital, or transportation taxi. But it's phase 1 that the patients get paid. And some phase 1 patients as well, only healthy volunteers.
So it depends on, to carry on from Mona, it depends on the time that they're giving away and the complexity of that trial as well. So, for example, we ran a 30-day study for an inflammation drug where they had to be in-house for 30 days. We collected blood every single half an hour. We had medical assessments on them. You know, it's a very pretty much you're there and you've got someone that's collecting blood, doing blood pressure, blah, blah, physician, this, that. You're taking away 30 days of your time, whether you're a university student, whether you take off time work. So you're reimbursed for the time and whatever you give up, which is, and you're that. And I guess it varies because, for example, if you did have a clinical trial where it was a vaccine and they only came in to get the vaccination shot, they went home, and then you did those adverse events over the phone, I would say, for example, they would get paid probably
depending on the day,
but it depends on, you know, it depends on what's being involved, where a 30-day might pay you a bit kind of big out, but it's for the compensation. You're not being paid for the risk, you're being paid for the compensation and your time that you're giving away, and that's separate to oncology. They don't get paid because they already have that disease, and it's a novel treatment that they won't have access to unless they came into this clinical trial. The same applies to pediatric trials. You are not allowed to pay a child to participate in a research. So it's just mainly healthy volunteers, and you know, at that phase as well. But it depends on.
Do you have to sign your rights away in any of those phases?
Informed consent.
Informed consent.
Informed consent.
Yeah, and you get re-asked as well, do you still want to continue at every stage of that process, every visit, you're like, oh, do you still want to carry on with the other 6 visits and stuff like that? And
if something goes wrong, there's a side effect.
You've signed informed consent.
You've signed an informed consent, but if anything goes outside of that informed consent, like something that hasn't been accounted for, because in the informed consent it will tell you all the side effects of the drug and all the ones that have been proved by previous studies, and all the ones that are kind of expected but they're not quite sure in every single participant if you're going to see that. So you can, if you had something that was so out of the blue, like you're doing a vaccine study and then ends up, for example, causing cancer, which is not what it's meant to do, then you are going to put a medical claim against that because that was not part of what, you know, you signed up for.
And in that aspect, the protocol would be updated, all of the documents would be updated, the informed consent would be updated, and patient would need to sign informed consent again because of that one adverse event that was triggered.
For one person. So every time you see a new safety event from a participant in any of those stages, you go and submit that to, you know, the TGA therapeutic, which looks at safety. You tell the sponsor, you call the investigator, you call the site. So there's all these measures in place for that. And every time you'd update even the investigational brochure, which covers, you know, it's pretty much a diary of that drug, which explains every single thing. So every time you find any little thing, you're on version 2, version 3, version 4. So this constant change of keeping up with the most recent stuff.
For healthy volunteers, for healthy volunteers, it's mainly backpackers or students.
Or students.
Yeah.
Just quickly, how are you guys going? I've got a few more questions. Do you guys have anything to keep going a bit more?
That's fine.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question. Have you found any tools for like statistics?
Any treatments that have been approved? A lot so far. Last year, 2 of the cancer studies that I was working with for liver cancer, stage 4 liver cancer, they have already been FDA approved, and so they've already been marketed. At the same time, there's other molecules that are being used to within that drug, but just for that non-small cell lung cancer, it's already been FDA approved.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, there was one last week, HIV drug that's been FDA approved in the US.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What subject should one work on in science? Like what kind, like biology, microbiology?
Everything. I think you should do chemistry, biology, maybe physics.
Yeah.
So I think do subjects that you enjoy.
Yeah.
That's probably the best.
Any of the science subjects that you enjoy.
All of the science subjects.
Yeah.
And maths as well.
Yeah, maths is for sure.
And maths.
My name is Imran. How does it feel to get there, like being your first job? Did you feel any pressure on yourself?
Me, I was already in, because like I said, at university I had the opportunity to do placement internships, so I was already working while I was doing my studies. So it was pretty much what I studied is what I was working in, so there was no different. There was no, oh my goodness, this is a challenge, or oh, this is very interesting. What I was studying is what I was already doing in the labs.
For me, maybe a little bit of pressure because I didn't have the same opportunity as Muna. So when I got my job, there was a lot of training, and I think for a whole month I was learning new systems. So yeah, a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, I think same thing as well. I do have that science background, I guess, being a scientist and dealing with complex analyticals and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, going into clinical trials, there's different regulations and there's a pharma and all this new terminology. But I think at the end of the day is you believe in yourself, and you know, you can learn that. If someone else learned it, I'm sure you can as well. So sometimes it's just learning and gaining experience from everyone around you, and yeah, believing in yourself. And you know, no one just comes to a job and knows everything in and out. Everybody learns, and everyone's journey is different as well.
Even I've been in the industry now for 10 years and I'm still learning. There's things are updated, so you just need to learn. Yeah.
The last question for you.
What would you suggest to someone who's 18 and just starting university? If you was to sort of rewind, maybe would you do something differently, or would you make a suggestion to someone who's 18 and starting university and had no clue what they wanted to do? Yeah, what would you change?
Last year I had no idea what I wanted to do. So you really need to try to identify what you want to do and so just try to find what you enjoy doing. There's a lot of general courses like Bachelor of Science, and there's many different streams if you're into the science field and not exactly sure what you want to specialize in. There's yeah, like myself, I did 4 different majors. I did biochemistry, developmental biology, physiology, and pharmacology. So it's really it's on you. You know, you really have to reflect, and at the end of the day, it's what you enjoy doing. It's not so much what other people are doing. So if I could go back, I'd probably say I'll do what I did. It took me long, but alhamdulillah, I'm happy where I am right now.
And like I said, it's a matter of what's going to get you out of bed in the morning. It's why do I want to get up in the morning to either go to uni or to go to work? Why? Yeah, but for me, it's, although I started off in preclinical, which was a lab-based work, it took me about 2 years to decide I wasn't really enjoying it. And communication with your peers as well, that helps. I saw those that I finished uni with who were in the clinical trials, the stories that they would tell me, and so, you know what, this is something that, give it a go. Fell into it and I'm enjoying it. No,
okay. I think for me it was a bit of a straight one because I just always loved science in high school and stuff. So for me, I knew I wanted to do science, and then, you know, did the lab aspect of it. But if I was to give anyone advice, I would say don't follow what other people do just because, you know, your friends are going to do a nursing degree or any other degree, you know, just because they're doing it, you just want to do it for that aspect as well. It might be easier journey because you can collaborate and all of that kind of stuff as well. And I will also say, do something that you love because you need a job that gets you out of bed. That's the first thing. And also try to get into something that's going to, I guess, also give you a job, because I know with universities nowadays, they're all trying to make money and they have all these courses and degrees and everything out there that sounds so lavish, and you know you're going to be told you get this job and blah blah blah, but you have to do your research into the industry. When you're in year 12, start looking into, you know, what the Australian market wants and where, you know, where those job opportunities are going to be in. For example, if I would give you an example, I had a friend that did journalism, for example, and you know, it's quite hard to get into journalism, and then you wear a hijab, and then you're Somali, and all these things. So try to do something that you love and something that you can actually get a job at the end of the day, and you can also take those skills anywhere, whether you travel outside or you go back home and you can, you know, work, or the Arabs, there's heaps of opportunities there as well. So yeah, look at a job that's, you know, you're going to get at the end of the day, not you end up with a huge HECS debt, and then, you know, you're just still
takes you where you want to go.
You know, you're still sitting where because you thought that's where it was going to get you. So yeah, I'd just say do your research into the market and do something you love as well.
Last question, does anyone of you speak good Somali?
Question.
Pass.
Who wants to interview?
How do you grade what good Somali is?
I can test you now.
Okay.
No pressure, we'll talk in private.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know how to speak Somali, but I don't know, like, I don't know. I might not be that great, but I speak good Somali, I'd say.
Clinical trials in Somali.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that I can't do. It's a different assessment.
Neither do I, so don't worry about that.
Okay, so that concludes our formal proceedings for today. So I think I speak on behalf of all of us when I thank you for your time and for sharing your journey and your experiences with us, and also for answering all our questions so eloquently. I think they put themselves forward to talk about their work, so please take advantage of them, because that's what this platform is about. So that ends the formal proceedings, but please feel free to network, and the refreshments are still available. So thank you all for coming tonight, and we hope to see you at the next one.